Okay, with everything getting more and more expensive, it seems like every day, what are some of the things that you do to save money on yard work and gardening? What are those things that you've gone to just kind of maybe ease up on the pocketbook a little bit? For me, I've got a few things that, especially when I started my life over, that I implemented right away in order to be able to live as frugally as possible. And I'm hoping some of these will help you as well. For one thing, when I first started over, I purchased a home that had a very, very small yard. Not because I like small yards, but because I knew it would be less expensive, number one, to buy a house with a small yard, but also number two, it was going to be a lot less expensive to maintain. So by having a smaller yard, I was going to not need as big of a lawnmower. I was going to be able to push mow my yard in just literally a few minutes. I mean, 15 minutes, and I had my whole yard mowed, weed whacked, and I was back in the house ready for a shower. So having a smaller property does help with the cost. Another thing I did was I looked at how expensive was it going to be to purchase a lawnmower. And I didn't have very much money, so I had to be very careful. I had to think through things really, really carefully. So I looked at my yard, and with it being a smaller yard, I didn't need a garden tractor or a ride-on mower. I knew I was going to be able to mow my yard with a push mower. So I looked at what was available, and then I started thinking, well, if I have a mower, that means I've got to buy gas, I've got to buy oil, I've got to buy fuel filters, I've got to buy air filters. I may have flat tires that need to be repaired. There were so many expenses that were going to go along with that. So I got this thought in my head, and I thought, I really haven't seen too many of these for years, but I'm going to go see what's available to me. And I went looking for a reel mower. Okay, a reel mower is a mower that does not have an engine. It is human powered. So the blades are, on the one I have, are about that long. And they are very sharp blades. And the one I have, you actually don't even have to sharpen the blades on. But it's a series of long blades. And as you push that mower, it cuts the grass. Well, I was in town where most of my lawn was grass. It didn't have a lot of weeds in it. It had some, but not a lot. And so I could take that reel mower, and other than the purchase price, I could mow my lawn for free. It cost me nothing. And it really, when I purchased it, I think the one I got, it was an Earthwise mower, and I think at the time I bought it, it was right at about $100. So that wasn't really all that bad. And now if you don't have $100 and you can't afford to go out and buy one brand new, go looking for a used one. And they are actually a very practical solution. If you've got the money to put out for the mower to begin with, there's very little that can go wrong with this mower. So a reel mower, once you buy it, you're gonna mow your yard for several seasons and probably never have to spend a penny on it as long as you buy a decent one. The Scott's company also used to manufacture reel mowers, so you may be able to still find some of those around too. And so that was my number one big thing that I did, was using that reel mower. Now, if you are at an age or in a physical condition where you cannot mow your own lawn, then before you go out and start hiring people to do that work for you, contact some of the local kids organizations, like, um, American Heritage Girls, church youth groups, the Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, all those kind of groups actually go out and do community service. And I know when my grandchildren were looking for community service jobs, that's the kind of thing they were looking for, is to go in and either, help a homeowner clean up their property and whatnot. So you may be able to find youth groups that would be willing to come out and either mow or weed your flower beds or whatever. Now, if you've got some precious flowers and plants, then you'll want to be on site to let them know what it's okay to pull and what it's not okay to pull. But a lot of times you'll find church groups and youth groups of different types that are willing to go out and perform some community service. So also, if you're wanting to put out gardens or you're wanting to plant flowers, instead of going out and spending top dollar on buying plant starts and seeds and so on like that, then consider swapping seeds, swapping plants. If you've already got some plants, maybe you have a friend or a family member that would be willing to trade you one of your plant starts for one of theirs. It's a great way to build up your flower beds or even your vegetable garden. If you've got friends who seed save, they may be willing to share some of their seeds with you. And for most of my life, the majority of the plants I had, they either came from family or friends giving me little starts, or me going into Lowe's or another store that sold plants. My first stop is always clear in the back, their clearance rack, because a lot of times they will have their plants, and they may have already bloomed, but go in and look for the healthiest ones you can find on their markdown rack. You can get them for 50 to 75% off the original cost. And for me, every year I add something new to my flower beds. And that way, you may not have the money to go out and buy all new plants for your flower bed in 1 year. But you can start with 2 or 3 plants, and every year add another 2 or 3 plants. And after 3 to 5 years, you would be surprised how beautiful your flower beds are. And by doing it that way, you have a mixture of older plants and newer plants. So your flower beds will flush out very quickly. I also was really good about looking at what I had and dividing the plants I had and taking some from the old plants and then planting them in a new flower bed so that I could have free starts. And it's the same when you get them from family and friends. If you ask, most gardeners are happy to share a plant start with you. So if you're willing to ask or willing to swap, then you can get your plant starts for free. And sometimes you can even get berry bushes or little tiny tree starts. I mean, I just got, I think I have 10 starts of lilac bushes that one of my daughters has on her property. They have these lilacs that have just multiplied and multiplied and multiplied, and she had way more than what she wanted in this spot. So she dug up a bunch of starts, and she shared some with me, and she shared some with her sister. And I mean, their starts about this tall. I mean, the next 2 or 3 years, they're going to grow pretty well. So those are all ways that you can save money. Save your seeds from year to year. Kind of is the same thing. Just like starting new plants from old plants, if you save those seeds, then you don't have to go out and buy new seeds. And also, one of my rules is the majority of my plants that I plant every year, I have to plant perennials. They will cost a little bit more to begin with, but over time, because those perennial plants come back every year, you're really going to save a lot of money because you're not going to have to go out and replace those plants every year. And I've even had luck planting perennials in containers. So consider those discount perennial plants. Even if they've already bloomed, they might not bloom for you the first year you have them, but if you put them in the ground and you baby them and you take care of them, the next year they will come back and you will get your blooms the second year. Also, when you are mulching and preparing your flower beds, most of the time people go out and they buy big rolls of landscape fabric, and I do that sometimes, not always though. If my money is tight, instead of buying the landscape fabric, I will collect old newspapers from anybody willing to get rid of them. You can use old newspapers, you can use cardboard. You can put that down in your flower beds, wet it down real good with a garden hose so that it kind of gets softened up. It will mold and stick to the ground. Then use your mulch or stone on top of that to hold it in place. And that will help keep your weeds down. So it's going to save you money and it's going to save you effort when it comes to keeping the weeds down in your flower beds. Now, as far as your mulch, you can actually mulch with a good compost. Now, it's not going to kill the weeds like going out and getting mulch that doesn't have, any seeds and so on like that in it. But also on your mulch, watch when the mulch goes on sale in the spring and then usually later in the summer, buy your mulch then. You're going to get a better buy on it, and buy what you can afford. So I have bought mulch in bulk and I've bought it in bags. The price doesn't seem to change that much no matter how you get it, but go in and get it on sale. And then you don't have to have it deep. Put a moderate level on, enough to hold down your newspapers, your cardboard, or your landscape fabric, whatever you have chosen to use, and then every year add a little bit on top of it. It may take you 2 or 3 years to get your layer of mulch built up where you want it to be. The first year is going to be your most expensive, but what I have done is in several areas, I have used stone, because as I get older, I will have less money that I can put into flower beds and so on. So I have, instead of starting to put down mulch, I have put stone down because the stone is not going to break down. Now, I still have areas where I couldn't afford, the first year I did it, I could not afford to get as much stone as I should have had. So I have some areas where I need to go and buy more stone and put more stone down so that I get it as thick as I want it to. The disadvantage to that is you don't have that mulch layer that's going to rot down and feed your plants. So you may find that you have to use a little more fertilizer than you would if you were just using good organic mulch or compost. Now, when it comes to your compost, your fertilizers, and so on like that, consider using some alternative. Instead of going and buying your store-bought fertilizers and your store-bought compost, especially if you have a family and you have table scraps and you have yard scraps and cardboard and newspaper, consider making your own compost bin and adding your brown and your green matter to it. Within a year, you can have a pretty good size pile of compost. And depending on what you put in it, where it's located, how hot it gets, will depend on how quickly that it rots down and gives you that organic matter. If you do it correctly, within a few weeks, you can have some good organic matter to use on your flower beds or your gardens. If you have a large yard or a large property and you don't want to have to mow the whole thing, consider naturalizing some parts of it. You can do this by buying or accepting for free bulbs, flower starts. Lilies are a good thing to naturalize with. Tulip bulbs, daffodil bulbs, a lot of those spring bulbs you can plant and they'll come up in the spring and fill that area with just beautiful blossoms. You can do native grasses and things like that. Plant things that will fill that area up and kind of choke the weeds out and just have that area naturalized. With your spring bulbs, once they grow up and then the tops of the flowers die back, you can mow over it and just clean it up if you want. But if you take an area and you just start planting lots of plants, if you plant them in fairly close proximity, they will all grow together and they will choke out weeds and grass. So it might be kind of ugly for the first 2-3 years until you really get your natural area established, but that's one way to not have to mow so much. And if it's more of a wild flower area where most of what's there is blooming, then you really don't have to mow it, and if there's a little grass or a few weeds, it really doesn't look that bad. What are some of the things that you do, and how many of these things have you guys used in the past? I'd love to hear, so leave some comments then and tell us some of your top tips and so on. Okay, you have a great day. We'll talk again soon. Bye-bye.